Thank you, Debbie. It's great to see that you all work in purpose-led organisations. There's a bank actually just down the road, and they used to, just to demonstrate how they were driven by their values, they actually used to have their values written out in huge glass letters in the reception area. Which led a friend of mine to say one day, it's interesting, isn't it, at Barclays, you can see right through their values. Purpose, it's very important to have purpose. How you're a purposive organisation, it raises interesting challenges. I might mention a couple of those as I speak. So, I wrote the Good Work report for the Prime Minister, but one. Theresa May, remember? And I also run the RSA, which is an organisation that does a lot of research on the future of work and technology. And also one day a week, I am now Director of Labour Market Enforcement for the government, which means I'm not allowed to be very political because I'm covered by something called PERDA. But actually, the ideas I'm going to share with you today about what good work is, what people care about at work, actually relate to a kind of theory of what's going on in politics at the moment. So if you were to ask me about that in Q&A, I would just have to give you a political response, even though I'm not supposed to. But I'll leave that with you. So the other day, I was reminded of something that Jeff Goldblum says in the film Jurassic Park. And he says at some point in that film, when I think everyone's being eaten by dinosaurs, basically, he says, just because they could do it didn't mean that they should have done it. And that point about technology, which is that just because something is technologically possible doesn't mean that we should necessarily unthinkingly do it. That came into my mind the other day because I was at a dinner for a multinational organisation, growing very fast, which is a scheduling organisation. I'm sure many of you use it or similar services. So it's a very sophisticated way of matching the employer's demand for labour with the employee's desire for flexible work for the hours that they want. And I sat at this dinner for over an hour, and people were talking about this technology, and the person sitting next to me who ran the firm was talking about purpose. And what I found kind of interesting in this conversation was it wasn't until I raised the issue that there was an understanding that this technology means, the same technology means two fundamentally different things depending upon the way in which it's being implemented. So in half companies, broadly speaking, that they work for, the scheduling technology was being used to enable people who continue to get the full package of rights as employees, so holiday pay and sick pay and pension contributions, the whole bundle, but to enable them to work in more flexible ways. So in that sense, it was an entirely benign technology which assisted people's flexibility, their balance of home and working life. But for the other half of the firms, the same technology was being used to casualize their workforce. So it was being used to move from a model of employing people to a model of people on 0 hours contracts, or even in some cases, the attempt, which will probably be blocked by IR35 going forward, but the attempt to portray people who'd previously been seen as employees as self-employed people or as freelancers. So what intrigued me was that the conversation of technology took place, and it took so long for people to recognize that embedded in this technology was some really profound issues about what companies felt their responsibilities were, about their overall strategy. And the reason I kind of want to start with that is that, walking around the exhibition outside, the emphasis is all around technology, and today is Innovation Day, so you'd expect it to be about technology. And I'm an enthusiast for technological change. So I was looking outside, total reward digital management, people-centered digital transformation, the ultimate flexible benefit platform. It's all terribly exciting, isn't it? But I guess I want to start off by saying that I'm quite resistant to a kind of view of the world, and this is why I talked about Jeff Goldblum, which says that the future is all about what technology can do. So there's a phrase you hear quite often, and the phrase is, how should we adapt to technology? Ever heard that phrase? The quick question is, how should we adapt to technology? I just want to say that is a completely stupid question. It's an unbelievably stupid question. I mean, who's in charge here? You know, I mean, last I checked, it's us who are in charge. So the question is surely, how does technology develop and how is it deployed in order to improve people's lives, in order to improve the world, in order to save the planet? And the second we start to say, well, the question is, how do we adapt to technology? It seems to me we've given up a lot of ground. We've fallen into a lazy and rather dangerous assumption. So very quickly, and I will do this very quickly, I could do it at much greater length if I was focusing on this, and I am available at reasonable rates. But let me very quickly say why I'm kind of resistant to this view of the world that says the future will be defined by technological possibility, which, as I say, is, I'm afraid, the kind of habit of mind that we've fallen into. So the first reason I'm resistant to it is because actually we are incredibly bad at predicting the future. We're incredibly bad at actually knowing what technology will mean. So all the people who tell you that 40% of jobs will be gone in 10 years, or that we'll all be replaced by robots, or that by the time we have this conference next year, there'll be no people here, just algorithms. Now, that's kind of great for getting headlines, that kind of stuff, and every day there's a new prediction, and they're all wildly different. But it turns out we're just very bad at this stuff. So whenever there's a huge amount of technological change, one group of people say this is the end of the world, there's going to be civil disorder, half the world will be unemployed, it's going to be terrible, it'll lead to revolution. And another group of people say, no, it's going to be great, we'll all be working 2 hours a week, we'll be reading Plato in the morning, playing guitar in the afternoon, and doing ballet in the evening or whatever, it's going to be the most amazing. This happens every time there is a burst forward in technology. It always happens. And the one thing about both those tribes, the pessimists and the optimists, is they're just always completely wrong. Won't stop people writing books about it, won't stop headlines about it, but that's the truth. And there are lots of reasons for this. But one reason, which is very relevant to you as you think about your company and how technology is going to change your company, I don't mean your reward system, but the company as a whole, is that we're very bad at predicting business models. Because what happens when technology comes in is that businesses redesign themselves as technology changes what they can do. So let me give you just one example of this. If I'd been speaking to an audience, say, 10, 15 years ago, talking about the music industry, people in that room would have said the music industry is dead. All the teenagers are pirating music. Streaming is kind of, you get like nothing for streaming. And they would have that, they did have their head in their hands. What are we going to do? The music, we've got no value proposition. Well, what they didn't predict was two things. They didn't predict that we would go from having 10 music festivals every summer, which is where we were 15 years ago, to having 1,500 music festivals every year. So what happened was the business model changed. Instead of bands going on tour to sell their recorded music, they stick their music up on YouTube for free and they sell tickets to their concerts. Secondly, nobody predicted that your telephone wouldn't just be a telephone, it would become a combination of a radio station and a record collection. So we just listened to a lot more music. I'm old enough to remember, this really is an amazing fact for anybody who's under the age of 50, but I'm old enough to remember that you used to have to go to a special room in the house to listen to music. I used to say to people, let's go to my bedroom and listen to music. I mean, it's a euphemism, obviously, but but now, of course, people listen to music all the time. And in fact, I can see a number of people around the room listening to music as I speak. I don't blame you, to be honest. I hope it's something that you're enjoying. So actually, the music industry has changed. The business model has changed, but it's booming. And that's what happens. I was just talking to, I've forgotten your name. Evelyn from Patagonia about how the retail sector is reinventing itself. Because some people would say to you, the future of retail is very simple. Amazon will own every single shop in the world, and you will go to a shop and you will hold your credit card to a sign and you will walk in and you'll take you have to hold your credit card, it'll read it from inside your pocket. Take whatever you want, go home, and there'll be no other shops, it'll all be, that's it. Well, that's not going to be the future because A, how does anybody make any money in that system apart from Amazon? And B, entrepreneurs will reinvent. And so Patagonia is saying, well, our shops are going to be activity centres or activism centres or whatever. And that's what interesting people are doing. So retail will change, but it won't die. So that's the first reason. And the second reason why that story, how do we adapt to technology, is disastrous is because it's really, really bad politics. And I will talk about politics at the end if you ask me a question about it. But one of the things that's going on in politics at the moment is people don't feel they have any agency. And they felt this for a long time. And so when you say to people, your future depends upon what robots can do, your future depends upon what algorithms can do, then that's a really disempowering story. And it's one of the reasons why people are so pessimistic about the future. They're so worried about technology. The RSA's done research, and it finds that most people think that technology won't necessarily mean their job will go, but they think it will mean their job will deteriorate. So most people in work think that technology will make their job harder. It will mean they're subject to greater surveillance and they're subject to greater pressure. That's a pretty depressing statistic, a pretty depressing reflection. So kind of my first big message to you really is that when we talk about technology and technological possibility, we absolutely have to ground it in the things that we care about and the things that human beings care about. And our story has to be about the role that technology can play in making people's lives better, in making people's work better, in making the world a better place. And we keep forgetting that, and we've got to keep reminding ourselves of it. Now, my report, the Taylor report, the one that the intelligent half of you have read, was also called Good Work. And the reason it was called Good Work was because I wanted to assert from the very beginning in that report that the recommendations that I made around trying to improve protections for workers, particularly workers at the bottom end of the labour market, had to be premised on the idea that we actually cared as a society about the quality of work in the British economy. And that's actually quite a new phenomenon. I used to work for Tony Blair, who was he was a prime minister when the Labour Party used to win elections. I know it's hard to believe, but a bit of satire there for you. And when I worked in government, the emphasis was all on quantity of work. It was just getting people into jobs. There was a phrase we used called work first. And so the assumption was, because it's better to have almost any job than no job, just get people into a job. And any kind of talk about quality of work would have been considered a bit of an abstraction, slightly dangerous. And I wanted to change that. And so that's why I said work matters. And the thing I'm most pleased about in my report is not that a lot of the recommendations are being carried out, and more of them will hopefully be carried out after the election. But that concept of good work seems to have entered into the bloodstream. And I said that good work mattered for a number of reasons. I'll spin through them really quickly. I said good work matters because it's a social justice issue. Half of people in poverty in this country are in work, which is a pretty remarkable statistic itself. So the social contract that people like my dad grew up into, which is if you have a job, you're guaranteed economic security, that social contract is bust, and it ain't coming back anytime soon. So the very least we should be able to say to people, if we can't say to them that being in a job will mean you're out of poverty, is we should be able to say to them you'll be treated fairly and decently, and you will have scope for progression in your job. So if we care about social justice, we should care about quality of work. Secondly, it's an issue around health and well-being, not just for individuals, because bad work damages your health. It used to be mainly back pain, now it's more to do with mental health, but also, you know, as you may have noticed last time you tried to get a GP's appointment, you had to wait 2 weeks. If people are getting sick and using the health service, that has an effect on the rest of us. So actually, bad work has externalities on wider society. Thirdly, good work matters because it's part of the reason we have a poor productivity. It takes British workers 5 days to produce what it takes German workers 4 days, and French workers 4 days to produce. And there's various reasons for that. Infrastructure is part of it. Skills is a big part of it. Quality of management seems to be a really big part of that productivity puzzle. So good work and better management is part of how we tackle productivity. The fourth reason I said good work matters is I said that there's a kind of disjunction between what we say about citizens in society, which is want them to be involved and engaged and active and respected, and to coin a phrase, to take back control, and the fact that still too often in British workplaces, there's a kind of master and servant assumption, which is, the deal is this, I pay you and you keep your mouth shut and do what you're told. And I think that disjunction between what we say about people in civil society and what we sometimes implicitly say to people about work, I think that's increasingly grating. And then the final reason I said good work matters is the reason I've already referred to, which is technology and the importance of saying that technological change will be related to improving people's working lives. Now, when I talk about good work, that obviously leads to the question, what do I mean by good work? And I'm thinking with an audience like you, I don't really need to kind of go through the well-known evidence of the different components of good work. The RSA has published research on this, and the government's promising to, in response to my report, to measure the quality of work and to be accountable for the quality of work. Sometimes people talk about a kind of Maslow's hierarchy with kind of basic pay and conditions at the bottom, and then work flexibility, and then issues like kind of teamwork and management, and then issues like autonomy, and then right at the top you get to kind of purpose. I don't really like that idea because the problem with that kind of hierarchy is it sometimes implicitly suggests that people at the bottom end of the labour market, lower paid, lower skilled workers, only really care about the bottom stuff, and it's only the higher skilled, more motivated people who care about the top stuff. I don't think that's right. I think that actually everybody wants the same set of things out of work. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what is it we want from work. And I'd encourage you, when you think about that very big question, and I was invited to speak big. I know you'll be talking about lots of more specific things during the day, but when we think about that question, let's go back to what we know about human motivation. And I'm sure an awful lot of you have seen the Dan Pink video or read the Dan Pink book, and so you'll know that account of the kind of different things which really drive human beings. Now, Dan Pink's work is derived from positive psychology, which is derived from a theory called self-determination theory, a very well-attested theory. And that theory says that ultimately human beings have three deep needs, three sets of deep needs. And those needs are autonomy, so freedom to be who we are, to pursue our own ambitions; connectedness, so the desire to be part of something bigger than ourselves, to be part of a team; and mastery, which is our desire to, as it were, be as good as we can be at whatever it is we have chosen to do. And I think those kind of three core things that motivate us, they motivate all of you all of the time. You can also think about them in terms of they're kind of voices in our head, actually. And everything you do every day, I would argue, not just me that argues this, other people, don't worry, I'm not just making this up as I go along, but what I argue is that nearly all the time we're responding to three different voices in our head. So one is the voice that is the voice of authority. So we do what we're told to do. So you're all sitting there and listening politely to me, even if you think I'm talking rubbish, and you're not going to storm the stage or throw anything at me, and you kind of obey the rules of the land, and you will go to your right plenary room, and you will use Slido in the right day. So, we respond to authority, we respond to the rules that are set for us. If we didn't, there'd be chaos, and we'd be completely exhausted. Secondly, we respond to the voice in the head that says, I'll do, so that's the voice that says, I'll do what I'm told to do. I'll do what I'm told to do. The second voice is the voice that says, I'll do what I think I ought to do, what is right for me to do. And that's really based upon the kind of tribe we think we're part of, the values we have. So that's why we stand up on the train to let a pregnant woman sit down. It's why I bought a copy of The Big Issue and I was walking in. It's why it is we volunteer in our community, look after our family, why we have some of the values and attitudes that we have. And that's connected to that kind of belonging need. And then the third voice you respond to is the voice that says, I'll do what I want. And sometimes that's trivial, and that's why you chose a macchiato rather than a latte this morning on the way here, but it's also why you've chosen your career, and it's also why you're going to choose your particular holiday. That's the stuff that feels personal to you. And so if you look at what people say matters in work, you'll find that it's those three things in various ways which matter to people. And people want all of those voices in their head. If we want to motivate people and to inspire people, we want them to hear all those three voices, and we want those three voices to be aligned. And for me, is the kind of, and by the way, I lead an organization as well as talking about good work, so I think about this stuff as an employer. That's what we want to do if we really want to motivate people. That's the kind of broader picture of how it is we reward people and we motivate people. So the question then for me is this: what kind of organization is it that manages to get those three voices working so that at work people are motivated by authority, they're motivated by values and belonging, and they're motivated by their sense of their own personal aspirations? How do we unlock those motivations? And so what that means is it means organizations where authority, that voice which is, I'll do what I'm told, is a voice which is strategic, that is purposive, that is responsible. That's how we feel about the people in authority over us. That when we hear that voice saying, I'll do what I'm told, we think, what I'm told to do is the right thing to do. I'm being told something that is clear. I understand it. I understand the reason for it. Secondly, it's that people work in organizations which get that second voice going, that voice of, I'll do what other people do, I'll do what I do because I'm part of a team. So fairness, is it an organization that feels fair? Do people feel they are part of a team in the organization, either at the kind of level of the day-to-day workplace, the team they're in? Recent research by CIPD finds that one of the most important factors in people's quality of work is whether they feel that they are in a team of people at work that they get on with and they like and that support them, and that they support. And are they supported to be sociable? Is that going on as well? So teamwork, fairness, all that kind of side of things. And then finally, is this an organization where the voice, I'll do what I want, feels like that's being honored? So I do have autonomy at work. The single biggest factor associated with sickness at work, stress at work, lack of autonomy, lack of control. That is the single biggest reason that people cite when it comes to talking about anxiety at work or when people fall sick at work. But autonomy is one part of this, flexibility is another part of this, and the capacity to progress. Do people feel in the workplace that their aspirations to grow and develop as a human being are fully reflected in the way the organization works? So by now you might be thinking, well, okay, this is all very interesting kind of theory, but what's the evidence for it? And what I would cite in regard to that is some work done by a friend of mine called Charlie Leadbeater. And Charlie is a futurist, a management consultant, a big thinker. And Charlie did a piece of work several years ago. He looked at the most innovative companies and organizations in the world. So it's about 10 years ago. So then he looked at FC Barcelona, the football club. He looked at Pixar, the animated filmmakers. He looked at a Cambridge molecular biology lab that was winning Nobel Prizes. He looked at an amazing Indian social enterprise called Pratham that is bringing affordable education to thousands, tens of thousands of villages across India. And the most amazing, most innovative organizations in the world. And he wanted to see what was the essence of these organizations. What was at the core of them as organizations? And he came up with this phrase. So he said, all these organizations are creative communities with a cause. Creative communities with a cause. And I love that. I mean, I partly love it because it's all C's, you know, so it's always nice, isn't it, when something begins with the same letter. I think sometimes people overdo that. I used to be a football coach for kids, and I remember one Saturday morning I was with my son and his team, because of course they were brilliant because they're a fantastic coach, were winning 6-0 at half-time. And I heard the other coach speaking to his kids. They were muddy and miserable, and they were pretty hopeless. And he said to these little kids, he said, it's all about the 3 T's. We've got to sort out the 3 T's. And one of the kids said, well, what do you mean the 3 T's, coach? He said, well, it's the midfield, the defence, and the attack. So creative communities with the cause. And I just think that's a really resonant phrase, because I know that you're going to be talking today about, you know, very concrete issues around kind of payment systems and reward systems and scheduling systems and all that kind of stuff, and it's really important, and what you do is really important in organizations, absolutely vital to get it right. But I do think in the end that one of the things that most matters to people is the kind of feel of the organization they work in, the culture of the organization they work in, the balance of the organization they work in. And that's why I love that phrase, creative communities with a cause, because what Charlie was talking about was, so cause, this is a point about authority, the voice, you know, the I'll do what I'm told voice. It was a form of leadership in all those organizations that was strategic, that was mission-driven, that was based on a really great kind of vision for the organization, and not self-serving, but leadership that was all about that desire to make the organization a fantastic place. Community, a sense in all these organizations that people were part of a team, and not a team that was inward-looking, but a team committed to doing something amazing in the world, playing the best football, making the best films, you know, solving scientific problems, bringing affordable education to poor kids. And also creative. Organizations that gave space for people to express themselves, which were not risk-averse, which were tolerant sometimes of failure, where there was an expectation that people would be able to express their creativity. And who doesn't want to express their creativity at one level or another? So what I want to end up by saying is this, that as well as all the brilliant solutions that are in the exhibition, and all the really important work you have to do about making the systems that you've got as efficient as possible. And it's nice to see that some of you have still got things that are older than the 1990s. That gives someone like me a bit of hope, really, that there's kind of retro systems out there. But as well as that, I think we need to think about how does technology relate to this bigger idea of what really matters to people at work, what really satisfies people at work, what leads people to actually overcome, by the way, this kind of notion, there's something interesting, isn't there, about the idea of work-life balance, because the notion of work-life balance, what it means is that my life is here, and that's really where I'm fully fulfilled and fully expressed, and my work is here. And how do I balance my life, which is really me, and my work? Well, that isn't really me, and I need to balance it. And I actually, in a way, I kind of want to overcome that and say, well, actually, it should be, my life should be my work. Not that it overtakes me, but that I am expressed, fully expressed at work. So if we have this kind of vision of organizations as creative communities with a cause, if that's what we think in the end motivates people, enables us to recruit the best people, retain them, develop them, get the best out of them, then I just think it's interesting to think about what technology might do to help that. So just 2 or 3 thoughts before I finish. The first thing is I think that technology really well used can enable greater devolution of authority within organizations. So I've talked a lot about autonomy. Autonomy is a fundamental human need. A lack of autonomy is a fundamental reason why people get miserable and stressed out and sick at work. So actually, if we use technology effectively, it enables us to devolve power in organizations, because the data means that the people who work for us and the leaders of the organization can see what's happening in real time. And so they don't have to exercise continuous control, because everyone can see what's happening. And let me give you an example of a brilliant organization that does that. So we've had speak at the RSA a couple of times, a guy called Jos de Blok. And he runs an organization in the Netherlands called Buurtzorg. And Jos's story is kind of interesting. He worked as a domiciliary nurse in a little team, and then he went off wandering around the world, a bit of a hippie, so he went wandering around the world with a guitar, I don't know. And he came back, and what had happened to domiciliary care nursing in the Netherlands is that McKinsey had been at it. I hope there's no one from McKinsey here, but it had been McKinsey'd, basically. And what that meant was it was unbelievably efficient. So everybody was very specialized, and all the care workers, all the nurses, were told they had 15-minute slots to go out with their clients, and they even had little barcodes that they flashed on the outside of the house. Unbelievably efficient, really, really efficient. There was only one problem, Jos said. Just one problem with the system, which was everybody was as miserable as sin. The nurses were miserable because they had no sense of connection to their clients. They knew they couldn't meet their clients' needs properly. The clients were miserable because they didn't get enough care, and it was all very depersonalized. So what Jos did was he did 2 things. He said, we're going to have a different model. We have a model which sees what we do as the third circle. The first circle is the individual and their family. The second circle is the community, and we're the third circle. And the main way in which we help people is to empower them and empower their families and empower their communities, rather than shoving everybody out of the way. So he had a model of care. And secondly, he said, we're not going to have any hierarchy. We're going to work as a team. So it's a great story, isn't it? Jos de Blok, team of people, very funky. He now runs 3/4 of the whole of domiciliary healthcare in the Netherlands. He has, I think, 9,000, more than that, nurses. And there is still no hierarchy. There's still, the entire organization is run on the basis of teams. Teams of around 12 domiciliary nurses. They don't have any leaders. And when they have a problem, they don't get in management, they bring in a coach. So there's a team of coaches. The teams have access to data. When they see they're not performing as a team, they bring the coach in. The coach sits with the team, and they work out together what it is they aren't doing right, and they correct it. And when he came and spoke at the RSA, people said, well, this is so wild and so radical. And I remember one person said, but what do you do about people who, nurses who want to do bad things? And he said, look, if you want to do bad things, you wouldn't be a nurse. There's banking. There's banking available to you if you wanted to do that. He said, basically, I think we should have a system based on the assumption that people will do the right thing rather than the wrong thing, don't you? And so the other thing that he said that I thought was brilliant, and I don't know if any of you are from the public sector, but it makes people in the public sector almost weep when I tell them this. But Jos said, I think people have only got a certain capacity for complexity in their brains, and I wanted people's capacity to kind of cope with complexity to be totally focused on meeting the needs of clients and not focused at all on dealing with bureaucracy. That's not how it feels in the public sector, generally speaking, in our country. So technology, in that case, really high-quality data that the teams could access, it allowed this amazing structure with almost no hierarchical control or bureaucracy, because actually, if you give people the data and they work in teams and you trust them, then they will see that they're not performing and they'll want to perform better. Secondly, when it comes to this kind of values and teamwork, well, a couple of ideas there. Firstly, kind of transparency. I think one of the great challenges for employers going forward, companies going forward, is to be really open with their staff about how they work. And technology enables organizations, I think, to really open up and share things with the people who work for them. This is a really big issue around technological implementation. So companies that I'm working with who want to engage their employees in talking about technology because they want to overcome the pessimism and fear that I described, they've got to be really open. One of the things they've got to be open about is their business model. They've got to share with all their staff, this is how we make money, and the question of how we make money in the future and then how we also provide good work, you really have to have transparency to do that, and I think that technology can enable that. I think technology can also facilitate engagement, it can facilitate teamwork, it can facilitate the social side of stuff. And then finally, in relation to that point about progression, I think if there was one thing that matters more than anything else to the future of our society in terms of both social progress and economic development, it is that every single job needs to be a learning job. Every single job needs to be a job where people feel that they are learning and progressing. And this isn't the case at the moment, and it is something that we really need to address. In fact, I think progression is much harder now than it used to be. Particularly with new forms of work. So if you think of gig work, for example, you've got tens of thousands of people doing gig work. None of those people can aspire to get to work in the head office. If you've been an Uber driver for 3 years, you earn 10% more than you did the first day you worked. That's the total progression story for those workers. So we need to work really hard to ensure that people can learn and progress at work. And one of the ways that I'm seeing some organizations doing this, what I think is great, is the creation of kind of online learning accounts for people, enabling people, yes, to record formal training and formal skills, but also to acquire things like digital badges, which are just little records of small bits of achievement. Going the extra mile, demonstrating a bit of resilience, a capacity for teamwork or whatever. So, we're all probably, people like you, we're all on LinkedIn. We all keep an account of our story and our growth, but for the kind of bottom 40% of the labor market, they don't have that story. They don't have a story of progression. And so one of the things we can use technology to do is to say, look, everybody can have a record of achievement at work. And even if you don't have formal qualifications, and even if you don't go on formal training, we can record there, the good things you did, what your colleagues thought of you, the bit of initiative that you demonstrated. And actually then you've got something which you can carry from this job to the next job. And we've got to really think about that. I'm working at the RSA with a fantastic social care initiative around self-managing teams like I just described. And one of the things I really love about them is that they recruit social care people. And how do they recruit them? They recruit people because they find people who are nice. So they'll be in a shop and there'll be someone serving them in the shop who's just really friendly. And they'll leave them a little card saying, you've got the right basic attitude to be a social care worker. Because in the end, it boils down to being generous and liking people. So, we need to be imaginative about the ways in which we can give people accreditation and acknowledgement, and things like digital badges and online learning platforms enable us to do all of that. So, there we are. I'll finish with a final thought. This stuff is really, really important, and you'll spend the day, I know, being positive. You look like an incredibly positive group of people. I know you're going to give me the most amazing round of applause in a few seconds' time. And that's really important to be positive. But it is also important to recognize where people are at the moment. And actually, overall, people aren't in a great place. My grandfather was an engineer at Dunlop, which was a terribly run firm. But, as an engineer, he loved science. And I remember, this is how old I am, I remember when the first colour television arrived in his street in Crosby, in Liverpool, and how people in the street would all crowd round the kind of hedge of the first house to have a colour, and they'd peer through the window of the first colour TV. Now, I can tell you, the first colour televisions were terrible. They were just like vivid, it was like being on an acid trip, also, so I'm told. But he was so excited. For him, my granddad, the colour television was one step on the inexorable road to colonies on Mars. Now, a poll by Mori last week found the highest ever figure for people who say our country is going in the wrong direction. So that's something just to kind of think about, that my granddad, rubbish technology, incredibly excited about the future, Today, amazing technology and enormous pessimism about the future. And so that's why, when we talk about technological change and we talk about the amazing possibilities that it provides for us, we must ground it, fundamentally ground it, in a vision of our commitment to people having fantastic working lives. Thank you.